I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Hey everybody, time for me to try to get through a few more questions, so let's get right to it. Here we have ScottyAnimation. He has a video question, and he asks, his first question is, logically, knowing there are many variables involved, what condition or status do you see mankind 30 years from now? This is it's a very good question. It's actually kind of complex, so I'm just going to touch on a couple ideas that I have, because this is something we could talk about for a long time. One thing I think is going to happen within the next 30 years is that privacy is going to basically disappear as technology increases and we all have more access to more information from all of our neighbors and everyone around us. People who aren't even near us, we have access to their information. Privacy is going to disappear. It's going to become a thing of the past, and with that, the government and the corporations' ability to intrude upon our privacy is going to increase. Since your neighbors have access to all this information, why shouldn't the government and why shouldn't corporations? You don't really have any privacy, so why should they be trying to protect it as much? So I think that's one ramification that's going to happen from all this technology. And I have nothing against this technology. I think it's just one of those unforeseen consequences that's going to happen, at least in the United States, because it's already happening around the world. I think gay rights and things like that are going to become more prominent, and it's going to actually get to the point where I think there's not going to be that much of a battle anymore. It's going to become the norm. That's a generation and a half from now. All the kids who are going to be adults at that time, homosexuality doesn't matter to them. So I think that's going to disappear. That type of bigotry is going to become a thing of the past. It won't be gone, but it's going to be diminished greatly. I see space exploration becoming more prominent, probably because technology and energy efficiency will get to the point where we can do more, and maybe even the point where we need more, where we need to go to some of the other planets in the solar system, maybe even to the point of looking at exploring them for energy resources. So I think that's going to increase. Hopefully, his next question is, what condition or status do I hope to see mankind in the next 30 years? And that also goes with that. One thing I hope happens is our ability to manage our energy resources. If we can get better alternative energy, more efficient energy, if maybe we can figure out how to make nuclear energy work, because I support the concept of nuclear energy. We just kind of suck at it right now. And if we got better at that, I think we would go far when it came to energy production. Dust. I think if we increase our ability to generate energy efficiently without the use of natural resources, I think the political value of things like oil are going to diminish, and that's going to help politics and the peace around the world incredibly. I spoke of a negative result from all the technology we have, that is our decreased amount of privacy, but there's also a positive outcome that can also come from this technology, and that is the increased amount of information being accessible worldwide will, I think, help foster the freedoms of other people, increase the amount of democracy, amount of citizen involvement around the world, and I think that's going to be a positive trend over the next 30 years. Another status I'd like to see with mankind over the next 30 years is I really hope there is some type of renaissance in the religion of Islam. I think they could really use one. Their fundamentalism is getting out of hand. I think the more rational factions within that community need to take a greater hold. That would be great for the world because it has a great, large and influential population, and I think we really need their participation in democracy. Are there any particular subjects I want to cover? Not particularly. Anything relating to faith, religion, atheism, creationism, intelligent design, evolutionary biology, things like that, I'm all good for. Also politics, education, my opinions on those. I would rather keep it to subjects that I can speak off the cuff on. I'm trying to do these unscripted, just kind of, read the question and then just go off the top of my head. So if it's a reference to something like a particular bill or a particular novel or a publication that requires me to, jot down a lot of notes, that messes up the flow. I want to keep this a little bit more natural, so I'd prefer not to do things like that. Also, I don't care about pop culture stuff like celebrities, and that's bullshit to me. So, AIGG asks, could you give some examples of outspoken atheists you consider to be assholes? It seems to me that a lot of contempt directed toward atheists stems from them being unwilling to pussyfoot too much around certain things that desperately needs to be said. I do agree there are figures in the forefront of the atheist movement that have a style and tone that is probably not doing them any favors. That said, a certain level of bluntness is likely necessary to get the message across. And I don't disagree with you. The most prominent atheist celebrity spokespeople I can think of at the moment are Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Bill Maher, the late Christopher Hitchens, and Penn Jillette. And they all have very different personalities, and I would not call them all assholes. But if you look at somebody like Sam Harris, who I don't agree with a lot politically, he has a style about him that's a little bit curt and can be very blunt and very direct, but there's a respectfulness to the way he approaches things. So I don't have that much of an issue with him. I may not agree with him all the time, but I wouldn't go so far as to say Sam Harris is an asshole. But then you have people like Richard Dawkins, who has a tremendous amount of arrogance about him, who belittles the people who don't agree with him and just has a sense of pompous arrogance to him. And I happen to agree with a lot that he says, but on the surface, since I don't know him personally, I have to say he comes across as an asshole. Christopher Hitchens the same way. I happen to have loved his humor. I agreed with him maybe 60% of the time, but he was very arrogant and very pompous, and he came across as a dick, and that's just the way he came across. But he was a dick on my side, so I didn't have much of a problem with him, but the fact is, he still came across as a dick to me. And if he came across as a dick to me, someone who supported him, I'm sure he comes across as a dick to other people. Bill Maher also comes across as a bit of a pompous ass, but the thing is, that's part of his personality, and that's part of his humor. I give him a lot of slack because he is a comedian, and he uses humor and terse, direct, biting humor as part of his way of getting a point across, and so I give him a lot of slack. I say his stage there's a kid over here who's whistling. I say his stage persona is that of an asshole, but hey, that's his job. Then lastly, you have Penn Jillette, who has a very loud, boisterous personality, but there's nothing arrogant about him. There's nothing belittling about him, even though he is very direct in his opinions. I like Penn Jillette. He has a big, loud personality. But there's a difference between having a big, loud personality and being an asshole. And Penn Jillette's not an asshole. Flossie26 chimes in with some random ass questions, which are actually more like statements. He says, what I think is stupid is that almost everyone I know is a smoker and are perfectly healthy. I thought smokers all died from lung cancer or heart disease. The fact that you make such a blanket statement about how all smokers die tells me that there's a certain level of ignorance in you about the subject of health, because no one ever claimed that all smokers died of lung cancer or heart disease. Look at the statistics, look at the association between personal health and the act of smoking, and you'll get a better idea. The fact that you say almost everyone you know is a smoker, and yet they are perfectly healthy, and you take that and you try to project that onto the general populace, tells me something else about the way you think. You think incorrectly. Secondly, I don't know what you mean by perfectly healthy. I know a lot of smokers. I've known a lot of smokers over the years, and very few of them would I ever consider perfectly healthy. Your small circumstance doesn't get to be projected onto everybody else. It's not how things work. Goes on to say that homosexuality is against nature and God, and there is no denying that. Yes, there is denying it. I'm denying it right here, right now. One, I deny the existence of your God, so to say that homosexuality is against God, I have to say prove your God before you can say homosexuality is against God. Secondly, if you want to say it's against what is said in the Bible, well, the Bible was written by people, so it's against what those people said, but doesn't actually mean that's what God thought. As for homosexuality being against nature, I think you don't know anything about nature. Homosexuality occurs naturally in nature. Gender switching, well, excuse me, not gender, but sex switching happens naturally in nature. So you can't say it's against nature when nature forms it on its own. What does it mean to be against nature? Nature doesn't have a plan for all these things. Nature doesn't have a consciousness. Nature doesn't have a blueprint and a manifesto where it explains everything that it wants. Nature just is. And the fact that nature develops homosexuality, it develops gender switching on its own? Tells me it's not against nature. Lastly, Flossie26 asks, why does every animal's evolutionary line have a missing link? That's consistently non-random. No, it's not. If it was consistently non-random, you could be able to say that every animal's evolutionary line has a missing link in a particular spot or in a particular pattern. That would be non-random. But the fact is, it's kind of random throughout the evolutionary lines where these missing links are. So it's not non-random. And I'm going to go blind from the dust right now. Windy day in Oakland. But I also have a problem with the missing link argument. The whole concept of the missing link is that you have two species. You have one in old times and you have one, say, now. And this one we believe is a descendant of this one here. And so we look at them, their anatomy, we look at the fossils, and we say, yeah, this one seems to have evolved from this one here. Well, evolutionary opponents will say, well, there's no transitional fossil between here. There's a missing link. Where is the link between them? Where is that transitional fossil? I say, okay, well, I understand that. You want a little bit more information. So we do some hunting, and we find another fossil. We find one here, and it does seem to be a transitional state between the two. So now we have the transitional object species between them, and we're all good. Oh, but wait, the evolutionary denial people will say, we need to have a transitional fossil between these two. There's a missing link here. There's a missing link, right? And there's also, we need to have a transitional fossil between these two. There's a missing link here. Now you have two missing links. Come on, you have too many missing links going on here. And of course, scientists do what they do, so they keep looking, because that's what they do. And of course, over time, we keep finding more fossils and we find more transitional forms. And so we fill in this gap here and we fill in this gap here. So now we have all these fossils, and they seem to be showing a line of descent from this one all the way to this one. But the evolution opponents will say, yeah, but see, now you need to have a transitional fossil between here, and there's a missing link here, and a missing link here, and a missing link here. Every time we fill in a missing link, we create two more for those who want to have this smooth flowing transition. And we know that's not how things work, but those who want to deny evolution want to say there has to be a smooth flowing transition throughout the fossil record. And we know fossils are really rare, so we don't get this smooth gradation through things. But they love to argue whenever you have two species, you have a gap in between, and you have to find the gap, or you have a missing link. So over time, the more fossils we find, the more missing links we have. So I hate the missing link argument, because we found missing links. It's just that the opponents aren't satisfied, and they want more of them. That's all. All right, that's it for this video. I'm trying to keep these things relatively short so you don't have to commit too much of your time to each one of them. Thank you very much for all your comments. Keep them coming. I'm going to keep making these videos about once a week, I think, going forward. Once again, thanks a lot for this conversation. Talk to you soon.
That's my job. That's what I do. I don't lose. I win. Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
Maybe you came by to congratulate me on last night's victory.